Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming in Miniature video. In today's video, we're going to continue on with our What's in the Box series. Now, in today's What's in the Box, it's actually a What's in the Bag. This is the Old Glory FGSA 1, which is a starter army for Field of Glory, right? But I'm planning on using it for my Meg, Mortem et Gloriam. Yeah, Mortem et Gloriam, which is the ancient and medieval era. Because they are the Field of Glory armies, will work just as fine. They work just fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up what's in this bag, and let's take a look. This is a Middle Republican Roman army. Starter army number 1, I guess. Okay, so let's go ahead and pop this up. This army was actually a very good deal, right? I think it is normally around $80, $78.75, which I thought is pretty good. Now, in Field of Glory, they list their units as battle groups, and so you'll see where it'll say like battle group number 4, Velites. Okay, so let's go ahead. There's 2 and 4, and then you'll have which they actually threw in some Italian ally battle group, Triarii, Command, and then we're going to go into each of these separately. Now, I've already opened this to take a look at it, and that's why I actually, because these are stapled, once you pop the staple, throw the staple away or whatever, I put it in a Ziploc just to make sure I didn't lose anything. So there's Hastati and Principes. Okay, I'm trying to get Hastati, Principes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then Triarii 1 and 2, and Velites, that's not a 4, 1, it's number 1 and number 2. Okay, so you get 4 of those battle groups, 2 of these, and 2 of these. And then you get a battle group of Italians. Now, it looks like there's a lot of Italians in there. Maybe it's about the same as that. We'll have to take a look, like I said. There's a command pack, which is mixed. We'll take a look at that. And then you'll have Roman cavalry 1 and 2. Okay, now, just as a little rules for Meg, the Meg Roman army, they don't call their units battle groups. They call them unit groups. That's because they don't want to call it, because this entire army could technically be called a unit, or a legion could be a unit, or a company, or a cohort could be called a unit. So they call them unit groups. And they basically have 2 unit groups. They have what's called a tactical unit group, or a TUG, and then they have what's called a skirmish unit group, which they would call a SUG. Alright, so we're not going to open each bag and look at every figure, but I will open one bag of each so that we can get a good variety, so you can actually see what the figures look like, etc. So like 1 Velite, 1 Triarii, 1 Principe, one I've already opened, maybe the command, the Italians, 1 cavalry. So we're going to show each of these right here. I need to give a little bit of a explanation of MEG. MEG has 3 levels of armies, army sizes. They call it a pacto, the standard and large. The Maximus is the big one, and then you have the minimal one, and then you have a pacto one. Okay, so the army lists are based on the Maximus, right? But if you and your opponent agree to play a pacto, you only play with 1/3 of your army. If you want to play the minimal one, you play with 2/3 of your army. And if you want to play with a Maximus, you play with all of your army. Now, some people wouldn't have enough figures to do an entire army, so you basically make concessions there. And plus, it allows the game to go a lot faster. The bases, specifically for the Romans, and or I should say close order infantry, you have 4 figures per base. And if there are 16 figures in here, that would be 4 bases, which is a mid-sized army, because it basically goes 2, 4, and 6 bases for a Roman tug. The velites are only 2 figures per base, because that's a skirmish unit. There is something called loose order, or like tribal, like your barbarians and stuff like that. They're usually 3 figures per base. And then the cavalry is also 3 figures per base. Generals, which the command, here you go, their bases are either square or round, and they have anywhere from 2 to 5 figures on a base, depending on the quality. Usually the 5-figure base is your army general, and then your subordinate generals are 2, 3, or 4 figures, 2 being incompetent and 4 being a very good general. So we'll look at the command as well and basically see how many units we can actually put together. All right, let's start off by looking at the velites. All right, if you go with 2 figures per base, you're getting a mid-sized unit. You get your 4 bases. Okay, you got the wolf skin. You got their little round shield and javelins. Tunics. Okay, this guy doesn't have a wolf skin. He's just wearing a tunic. And it looks like a little metal helmet. Maybe it's a leather helmet, but yeah, it looks like a little helmet. And you got some guys here holding the spear overhead, like they're gonna thrust with it possibly, or throw it. Where these guys are leaning way back, and they're gonna throw it. So you have 3 different poses, it looks like. The 3 non-wolf skins, or 4 non-wolf skins, and then the 4 with, you have 2 different poses. Okay. And we'll take a close-up of these here after I open all the packs. All right, the next set we're going to look at is the Triarii. And these come with some metal rods for their pikes. These suckers are super long, way longer than I think they should be. These would be good for sarissa, like for Greek pikes. These guys are almost 90 millimeters, about 80, 87, 88, something like that. So you'd need some metal snippers to snip them down. Oh, wait a second. Okay, they give you 4 of them, and there's 8 figures, so if you cut them in half, they'd probably be exactly the right size. And you'd have 8 of them. Okay, that's good. See, good to know. Okay, and these guys have the singular plume, chainmail, oval shield. There might be some subtle differences to their poses, but mostly they look all exactly the same. There's a little bit of mold release you're going to have to wash off with some soap and water, and you're going to have to get in here with an X-Acto knife and trim up some of the flash and mold lines. Okay, so there's 8. So there's only 2 bases of Triarii, which is the actual size of the tug. The next group we're going to look at is the Hastati Principes. Okay, so they give you half and half with these guys, and they're holding a spear in their hands. I don't think that's a pilum. I think it's an actual spear, and he's got 2 hands on it. So his shield must be just hanging by strap. And this guy's got 1 hand. Nope, he's got 2 hands on it as well. Now, the Hastati are just wearing tunics with maybe a metal breastplate, a square breastplate, and this does look like a pilum because it looks like it's got a big box on the front of it and then the spear tip. Now, in the way Field of Glory does it, I think they have mixed units where you have a unit of you mix your Principes with your Hastati and you get a mixed unit, where in Meg I don't believe that is the case. Yeah, so you get a couple of different poses. The Principes are in chainmail. And the Hastati, okay, he's in chainmail. There we go. And the Hastati are in just their tunic with breastplate. All right, and you get 8 of each. So, yeah, these guys all look the same. And that's a hand, I do believe. Nope. Okay, that's not a hand. That's an actual block. So that is a pilum. Okay. So it's 1 hand on the shield, 1 hand on the pilum, and then that what I thought was a hand up front is actually the heavy block in the front of the pilum. But these guys all look the same. The Hastati look like they come in a couple of different poses. You've got the same as the Principe pose, basically a shield with the pilum, and then you've got this forward-looking running pose. All right, we'll take a look at these as well. Now we're going to take a look at the Italian allies. Now I'm curious because this looks like a lot of figures. And so I don't know if this is supposed to be a tribal unit or if it's just like if it's a loose order unit or skirmish units or what. I'll have to take a look at what these guys actually are. But they all have these big hoplite looking round shields, and some of them look like they're throwing javelins. Some look like they are just carrying their spears upright or behind their shields. Okay, I was able to split them up into their different poses. There's only 3 poses. There's an overhead throw. There's a at the side upright, and then there's at the side thrusting. If they were in close order, you could make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bases, because there's 1 extra here and there's only 3 there. That could be 2 units of 4 stands, which would seem to be very reasonable in this Roman army. Yeah, I don't think it's easily divisible by it might be easily divisible by 3. It is not. So I'm sure it's supposed to be the same close order battalions. That's pretty cool. Okay, so we'll take a look at one of each of these poses. Yeah, these guys have no armor. They are just tunics and a shield and a spear. That's it. All right, let's take a look at the cavalry. All right, guys, what I'll do is I'll take a screenshot and I'll put it up here on the screen so you can see the mid-Republican Roman army for the Magna actually shows the Hastati and the Principes are on one line. So I guess I can use them as I can mix them to make a bigger, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put Hastati on one base and Principes on another base, and that way and then I'll just put 2 of each into a 4-unit base. But then it also shows the Italian infantry at the bottom of the list, which is actually not the bottom of the list because this is a 2-page army list. But the bottom of this first page, it shows the Italian infantry, and it shows that the maximum bases that you can have is 8, and so that's what's included with this army, believe it or not. And the unit size is 4 or 6. So see, you can field it as a 6-base unit if you wanted, or 2 4s. So it's just up to you. And it is considered drilled, so or not drilled. Well, drilled, not close, but flexible, which I think means you can base it either way. And I think it means it has like the advantages of close and the advantages of open. So I'll have to take a look at that in the rules. I'm not sure. In this, it also says the triarii can be done in 2 different ways. You can have 1 base for every 4 bases of Hastati, which this does, or you can have them completely separate and just have a 4-base unit. I think I would. I don't know if I'd want to have them mixed in or not. But the triarii, in a combined with Hastati and Principes, they get melee expert, where if you use the triarii separately, they use a long spear. They get the long spear rules and the shove rules, but they don't get melee expert. So I don't know. It just says see notes. So that's on page 2. But I just wanted to show that. All right, so now let's look at the cavalry. You get 12 cavalrymen per bag, and get 2 of those. What I was trying to do is I separated the horses by poses. You get 6 different poses, 2 of each, which I thought was really good. I was expecting 3 or 4 poses. But these are all 6 different poses. The heads are in different places, tails, their legs are in different positions. And then there are 3 different poses of riders. Resting at the side, overhead, or throwing overhead. This looks like thrusting overhead. This looks like throwing. And then this is just resting. So that's That's pretty cool. We'll show a little bit of the some close-ups of the Roman cab as well. And then finally, this is the command pack right here. It has 3 mounted commanders. One of them looks like the overall commander, looks like a Caesar model. Just a guy with no weapon, just his hand out. And then there's 2 guys holding their swords out like generals. So you get your overall general and your 2 subordinate generals. There are 4 command elements here. There's 3 different poses in each command. So they're like 4 swordsmen, 4 musicians, and 4 standard bearers. And they're in different poses, so you can mix and match them how you'd like. 2 different musicians blowing the horn, 2 different standard bearers, one with the standard and one without. And then there are 2 different poses of commanders, one pointing his sword forward and one holding his sword back. Yeah, so you can make 4 command stands. Now, this being 3 bases, if you combine those into your Hastati Principes, using like a Hastati or a Principe to flesh out these stands, then you're going to have 3 additional stands that you're going to be able to use in other locations. But there is enough command for you to fill the 4 battle groups that you received. You'll just have a few extra figures to start another battle group. All right, now we're going to show, this is one of the poses of the Velites with the wolf cloak, throwing his javelin. I'm going to speed through these pretty quickly so we can just advance this. There's a lot of figures to show. There's another one of the Velites, also with the wolf cloak, different pose. This guy's holding it way back. Now we have Velites without the wolf cloak. They've just got tunics and a little metal hat in various poses. Now, some of these skirts are kind of short. And here's a Triari. He doesn't have a spear in his hand. That's one of the spears you have to add. And there's another pose. You can see he's got the Corsican helmet. A little work needs to be done to trim and to smooth out the shields. And here's a Principe with his pilum. All right, this is the Principe with his pilum, hand low, thrusting upwards. A little trimming on the shield needs to be done, flattening it out, especially if we're using decals like I am. And this is a Hastati facing forward. You could see that he's got no armor, just a little breastplate. You can see the cross straps on his back. This is another one with the forward-facing pose. The plumes on his helmet look a little different. And this is one of the 3 generals with his breastplate, his hand up, no helmet, cloak on the back. The other generals have their swords out and they have a helmet with, a horsehair plume, breastplate. You can see the abdomen, muscles, cloak. And this is one of the standards, one with the cloth hanging down, maybe with a Legion number on it. This is the eagle that you would carry. I don't know if they're supposed to be paired together, but I'm separating them, putting one per unit. And this is one of the horns. It's a big giant horn, that's big circle. And here's another one of the horns in a different, his feet are in a different pose. This is one of the officers, one with the sword pointing forward. He's going to have a breastplate. And this is the officer with his sword to the back or raised high, also breastplate. Cape. One of the cavalry, one with his spear high overhead. Thrusting up, either thrusting overhead or throwing. This is the next one with the spear up high, like he's going to thrust down onto someone beside the horse. He's got it choked up close to the spearhead. And this is the one at rest with a spear sitting beside him. And this would be one of the Apuli Italians. No armor, just a headband and a big brass shield, bronze shield, and a spear. Another Apuli javelinman carrying his javelin at his side. They look like they're wearing high boots or calf boots, as opposed to the Roman sandals. And he looks like he might be ready to throw that spear or javelin. All right, now that we've actually seen what you get in the bags and what the figures look like, I have put together and painted these figures so that you can see what the army actually looks like on the table. Okay, so let's go over all the different units so you can see. Let's start with the generals. There are, in the command pack that you receive, you got 3 mounted figures. I mounted them up as 3 generals, subordinate or overall commander. This guy's probably the overall commander. He looks a lot like Caesar, you know, that kind, no helmet, you know, no weapon. And then these guys have their helmets and swords. So they would be subordinate commanders. All right. You also get 2 battle groups of cavalry, 12 figures each. And remember, I based these specifically for Mortem et Gloriam, Meg, but this bag was originally designed for Field of Glory, which I've noticed that the Field of Glory armies and the Mortem et Gloriam armies are almost identical. So you can use them interchangeably. There are 4 battle groups or tugs of Principe / Hastati. So the way Meg works, and Field of Glory, they count the battle group here as a mixture of Principe and Hastati. So what I've done is I've made 2 bases of Principe and 2 bases of Hastati, so that if I ever needed to separate them, like if I was playing Hail Caesar or something, and I needed to have a Hastati unit and then I needed to have a Principe unit separate, I could do that. I would still be able to do that. All right, so we got our 4 battle groups. Now I've gone ahead and put decals on these guys and painted them up. And over here we have the Triarii, right? The Triarii. This would be the long spears, where these guys are all carrying the short throwing pylons. What else? Oh yeah, you got 2 units here of Velites. These would be your SUGs or your skirmishing units. There's 2 of those. And right here, these 3 are the Italians that are provided. I looked at the Italians. They are Apulian. So they are an Apulian. Italy's broken up into a number of different tribes. You've got the Etruscans and the Grecians, the Apulians, hill tribes. You've got all different kinds of units, the Samnites, and the list goes, Campanians. So the list goes on. But I opened these figures and I went to the Old Glory website and I compared them to the pictures of their different Italian units, and these guys were Apulian, the Apulian figurines. This army has or can have Italian allies, and the Italian allies fight as a, now, and I'm basing this on Meg, they can fight as a flexible unit, which means they would have some units mounted 4 across and some units mounted 3 across, 50-50. And then, like in this unit here, my front rank would all be 4s, 4-4-4, right? And then on the second rank would be 3-3-3s. And then depending on who was in the front of the formation would determine how they're deployed. They're either tight or they're loose. So I thought that was pretty cool. But the Apulians, I looked at the Apulian army list. The Apulians don't have flexible. They have loose. So I mounted these guys as a straight up Apulians, and then I plan to get additional allies or different allies to represent the Italians that fight with them. And because of that, because I had this number of figures and I was going to go loose and loose, I had a number of figures that I couldn't do a full 3 battle groups. So I decided that I would make some skirmishers as well, because the weapons they're carrying is pretty much a javelin, and they fight with it as a short spear. They have, their warriors are called javelin men, I do believe. They're called javelin men. And then their elite guard is called veteran javelin men or something like that. I'll put it up on the screen so you'll see. So I decided just to go ahead, and then they have javelin men that are actually skirmishers. So depending on how you want to deploy them, you can. Okay, so to make a long story short, sorry about that. To make a long story short, I based them up as actual Apulians and with their standard warrior battle groups, and then with their skirmisher battle groups. Okay, so recap real quick. 2 cavalry units, 4 a mixture of Principe Hastades, and every one of these has got 2 Principes and 2 Hastades, every one of these. Triarii, there's a grand total of 4 bases of Triarii, 2 Velites, and 3 generals. And there were a few extra models left over. There was about 4 to 6 Principes that were left over, because all the command stands that I've got out here, I put them all in the Principe base. So those extra Principe figures I took off, and they're in a bag somewhere. Because you actually get more than enough to do this. Maybe 1 or 2 more stands if you wanted to do that. Alright guys, well thank you for coming out and checking out what you get in the box for the Roman, the mid-Republican Roman starter army from Field of Glory. And if you're interested in figures like this, you should check out my eBay store. And if you're interested in maybe having me paint an army for you, you should drop me an email at this address where we can talk about a commission. All right, so thank you for coming out and checking this out, and I'll see you in the next one.